Hello everyone, I'm John Anderson from NetScout, and basically what I'm going to talk about here is using the AirCheck to solve various problems in Wi-Fi. So Keith sent out an email to presenters saying, do not start with any set the background slides or that, which suited me fine because I'm not really that good at small talk or setting the stage, so I'll jump right in. Originally, I was going to explain how to solve some common problems, but it got to the point where trying to explain to this audience how do you look for CCI and check signal levels was sort of silly. So over the past year, I've collected a lot of tips and techniques from a lot of you and from a lot of our other users and our testers and everything on various ways you can use the AirCheck. So rather than going over some of the obvious test cases and problem solving, I'd like to cover maybe some of the lesser known techniques. So if you do have an AirCheck, you can maybe get the most out of it. So this is really going to be like a series of 5 talks here, where I'll just go over a series of various techniques that mostly have been given to me by users out in the wild using this thing for real world test purposes and maybe not so obvious to most users. So we'll just jump right in. If we do have time at the end, I will cover some of the more common problems. We'll see how that goes. So first of all, resolving hidden networks. So you can locate access points if they're part of a hidden network and they don't need to be resolved. Locating an access point is really all about homing in on the beacons for a specific SSID. So you don't need to resolve those. But if you do want to connect to a hidden network, you need to resolve the SSID first. And there's really 2 ways that you can do this, that the AirCheck does this. The first way is it will capture client management traffic to a hidden network. So if there's a client device sending out probe requests for a hidden network and a access point responds to that, and the AirCheck can capture that, it will pick that up and resolve it. Sometimes though, of course, this is a little bit spotty because you have to be able to capture that management traffic. A much more reliable and faster way of doing it is basically to allow the AirCheck to transmit probe requests for the hidden network. And this will resolve it much faster. To do this, you want to add your hidden network, to a profile. So basically what you would do in this case, here we have a hidden network that was found for a particular BSSID. So from the home page, select your settings, select your networks, and then you want to add network. You'll get a little pop-up keyboard there that will type in the SSID. In this case, the SSID that we're going to put in is find me. And once this has been added, you can now see that the SSID has been resolved. Now, this will allow you to connect to the hidden SSID. That's really all there is to that one. Tracking devices by manufacturers. So this is not something I really thought about, but somebody provided me this use case, which I thought was very interesting. So they were actually in an environment, they wanted to know how many smartphones, how many iPhones, how many Samsung Android phones, Blackberries, Intel laptops, how many Proxims were using the network, were in the environment. So this is something that's pretty simple to do. Basically, you let the AirCheck do 1 or more channel scans. And if you'll notice, when you turn it on, by default, the AirCheck will scan each channel for 250 milliseconds. That's configurable. But in the first channel scan, it will probably pick up about 80 to 90% of the access points and clients out there. After about 2 channel scans, you're pretty much up in the high 90s as far as what it's going to find. Import that session data that you've saved into the AirCheck manager. And then you would sort the clients. There's a client table on there that you could sort by vendor. Or better yet, you can copy all that to your clipboard, paste it into whatever app you want, like a spreadsheet, and then run whatever analytics you want on it there. So to illustrate, from the AirCheck, up here is where you have your channel scan status. So when you turn it on, just wait for it to do 1 scan, maybe 2 if you want to collect a few more. And then you save your session. Now when you save a session, the file name comes up by default. You can also add location and notes to it, which could be useful. What I would recommend is on the session, on the file name, maybe type in there the location from where you collected your data, maybe the date. The onboard keyboard that you'll have to enter that stuff in. It's sometimes not the easiest thing to use, but by doing this, as I'll show in a moment, it can be very useful for when you're looking at your data later. So if you haven't used the AirCheck G2 Manager, I would encourage you to. I know that using a Windows app for managing a tool is a little bit old school. And we are in the process of putting more and more data and analytics into the cloud. But there's a lot of really neat things you can do on this thing, and this is one of them. When you import the session into the AirCheck Manager and go to the Clients tab, you can, right there's a column there, vendor. You can sort all of it by the vendor. Any of these columns are sortable. And you can easily see what type of devices are on what type of networks per vendor, like from Apple or from Samsung or Intel. But you can also copy or select and copy to your clipboard all the data, any or all of it. Pretty much anything in the app, any of your data that you've collected, including connection logs, you can copy to a clipboard, paste into whatever application you want, like a spreadsheet, and run analytics. So here, we've pasted into a spreadsheet, and you can see right away that we've got the MAC address of each of our clients, whether they were associated or probing, and then it's sorted by the vendor. So you can easily go through here, you can add up how many Samsungs or how many Apples or whatever were connected at that particular time. And if you named your session per location, because you can open multiple sessions at once, so you can go into a site, go to one location, save all your data, refresh, go to another location, save it. If you name each of these locations, maybe different floors of a building, if you name the sessions after that, when you import it into a spreadsheet, you'll not only get the list of clients that were connected, but you'll also get where you actually picked those up at. Generalizing that a little bit more, you can pretty much copy to your clipboard any or all rows from any of the tables or the connection logs. So I know that from what a lot of you have told me, the AirCheck is primarily used as a spot checking tool. You're on site, you're real time, you just want to check something, you're testing, you're doing real time troubleshooting. But there's a lot of really good data collected, as Keith and Daryl were showing earlier. And so there's no reason to lose that data when you turn the device off. And so currently, AirCheck Manager is a really good utility for bringing this data in, saving it, and then again, you can copy anything to your clipboard, paste it into a spreadsheet. Now, one caveat with that is the column headers don't get copied. So what I've done is set up a spreadsheet with the column headers already pre-populated in it. So all I have to do is copy to my clipboard, go to my A2 cell and just paste it there. And the column widths, everything's already set up. So I've got one spreadsheet that I can get all my networks, my channel metrics, my APs, my clients, all in there. There's a lot of different possibilities for doing analytics on that. Sweeping the environment. So this was when we first released the AirCheck, we have SSID filtering in there, but it was basically an include filter, meaning you could enter the SSIDs that you want to focus on, and it would only display those SSIDs. One of our beta testers gave us a great idea. They were testing in stadiums, And they said they wanted to sweep it to make sure that there were no unauthorized networks running. And so we added an exclude filter on there. So if you're interested in knowing or need to know what unauthorized networks are running, there's a lot of SSIDs in the air, then you would basically set up an SSID exclude filter. So you go to settings, and a lot of these techniques obviously require setting changes, which can be a little bit cumbersome. So later on I'll highlight the use of profiles so you don't have to constantly go in here and make these setting changes. So you want to select 802.11 settings and SSID filtering. Now here's where you want to set up an exclude filter and then type in the names of the SSIDs that you basically belong to you, the authorized SSIDs. So these are the ones that you don't care about because they're authorized to operate in the environment. Now when you make sure you hit apply. Now when you're on site, you go to the environment, you would just walk around and any of the SSIDs that don't belong to you would basically show up. And at that point you can select one, get all the details for it, select the APs, and you can see what APs are basically behind that SSID. And then you can go ahead and select that AP. Is it a rogue? Is it something that shouldn't be there? If it is, you hit the locate, and you can actually go around and locate that particular access point and get rid of it. Now this obviously, if the access point is there with its own SSID. If there's an access point, and I don't have a slide on this one, but there's an access point that's basically spoofing your SSID, then you would do something similar, but what you would do is select your network, see all the access points in there, and the access points for that network, in this case there's only one, but they're going to be listed, and you can sort them by BSSID, and if it's an all Cisco environment, and you go through and you see there's a Netgear one in there, that's pretty much going to stand out like a sore thumb. So at that point, you could do the same thing. Go ahead and locate it and get rid of it. So just like you can locate access points, you can also locate client devices with this. So if there's an IoT device out there that you need to find, or a lost or missing device, a device that's unauthorized, or perhaps you're in a controlled environment where there's only certain types of devices allowed. Maybe you don't want smartphones on your network, or you don't want specific types of manufacturers' devices on your network. You can set up a filter for that based on the OUI or even the MAC. Perhaps you see from your infrastructure system that there is a client device on your network that shouldn't be there, so you actually have the full MAC, but you still have to physically locate that. Now, a couple caveats. The client must be connected and transmitting in order to locate it. And locating a client is a little bit trickier than locating an access point because they don't always transmit as often as an access point does. When you're locating an access point, you're homing in on like beacons and probe responses. Locating a client device typically doesn't have as many transmissions, so it's a little bit trickier, but it can still be done. Other caveat, and this may seem obvious, so I'll play Captain Obvious here, but you do need to be in the same area as that device. I mean, if your phone got stolen and it's currently being sold on the streets of Des Moines, Iowa, you're not going to be able to find it with this. But if you're looking for a device that's connected to your network currently, and you basically, you got an OUI that you can search on, this is how you would do it. When you're in the clients page, or basically any inventory list that's on the AirCheck, there's a filter button up here. And if you select that, you can filter on any number of fields, including the MAC address. So if you select the MAC address, you get the screen, you can actually type in the full MAC if you know it, or just, you can type in the first few bytes. If you know the OUI, you can type that in. If you just want to find devices, like if you want to find all the proxims that are on your network, you could just type in proxim. And then you're going to see your list filtered to just those devices. It'll make it much easier to find the one that you're looking for. And of course, at that point, you just select the device, select locate, and you do locate it. When you may have noticed if you tried that it doesn't allow you to locate a probing client if it's not connected. And we intentionally left that out because it was a bit iffy. I think we'll probably add it back in the next release because we have gotten some requests and demand for it. But obviously, if you're locating a probing client, as the client probes on the different channels and the AirCheck is scanning the different channels, it's kind of hard to scan on the channel right when the probe request is sent out. So what we may do in the next release is maybe lock in on a specific channel. And as the client scans through its channel, setting out its probes, whenever it hits that, we'll be able to at least pick up that probe. It's going to be a little bit tricky to locating that, but we've got enough demand for it that we'll go ahead and put that in as well. But for now, you basically locate clients if they're connected to a network. So the auto test, this isn't going to be a user guide, so I'm not going to go through all the different tests in the auto test, but the adjacent channel interference is kind of a unique one, so I just wanted to explain what's working there and give you a technique that makes it a little bit more meaningful. So in the adjacent channel interference test in an auto test, what the AirCheck is doing is basically it's going to go through the 2.4 band and scan all channels. Even if you set channel scanning to only look at one or a few different channels, during the auto test it will scan every single channel. Because what it's doing is it's counting APs that are going to be on adjacent or overlapping channels. And then for every channel that has an AP on it, it's going to count all the APs on overlapping channels. Now, if there's not an AP on a channel, there's no AP on channel 3. It's obviously, there's no ACI on channel 3, so you're not going to look at that. But if there's an AP on channel 4 or on channel 6, for that channel, it's going to count all the APs on overlapping channels and then report the top 3 channels. So what we see in this result, it's reported channel 4 having 14 APs on overlapping channels. And then channel 1 and channel 6 each has 1. And where do you think those 14 APs that are overlapping on channel 4 come from? They're probably APs on channel 1 and 6. You have all your APs on channel 1, you have a whole bunch on channel 6. There happens to be 1 on channel 4. So that got counted here for channel 1 and 6. But I mean, the AP on channel 4 is not your AP, so you probably don't really care to see that number reported. So what you can do here is you did design a 2.4 network because your customer wanted you to. And of course, you put it all on channels 1, 6, and 11. So you only want to look at those results for auto test. So set your channel scan to only 1, 6, and 11. And then for auto test, it'll still scan all the other channels, counting APs on overlapping channels. But it'll only report results for those channels that you've limited your scan to. So like this. Go to your settings. Select 802.11 settings. And then select channels and bands. And this is where you're going to select what channels you want to scan, and also set your channel scan time. So for example, here we just checked 1, 6, and off the display here is channel 11. Then you hit apply. Now when you run auto test, the results are only reported for those 3 channels. And here we can see we've picked up one AP on an overlapping channel really for each of these. If you're sending somebody else on site that may not have any Wi-Fi experience or knowledge, and you just want them to go run a quick test somewhere, you can set this up for them. It's very easy. Anybody who's capable of touching a screen can turn the AirCheck on, go to whatever location in the building you want them to test, and hit the auto test and generate some meaningful results. Capturing screenshots. How many people know how to capture a screenshot on an AirCheck? Yeah, we didn't make this a secret for any particular reason. We were just concerned about putting too many buttons on the UI. We want to make sure the UI was kept fairly simple, so we didn't want to put any extra buttons on it. So we were kind of hoping that once the user figured out how to do a screenshot, they wouldn't need the extra button, they just do it, but it's not obvious. You basically press and hold the little help icon, question mark, up in the upper right screen. And actually, we added this because we got a lot of input from people that said, you know, I don't care about reports, I don't care about saving my data, I just want to show the screen to somebody. I've got my customer, I got my manager, my colleague, I just want to show them what this looks like. So if you press and hold that for about a second, you hear a beep, you'll see a little camera icon pop up, and basically will capture the screen and save it as a PNG file. Now there's a couple ways you can get this PNG file. You can transfer it directly to a USB flash drive that you insert in the tool, or you can import it into the AirCheck G2 Manager. So whatever screenshots you've captured, go to Settings, and then go to Manage Files. Then under Manage Files, you can select to look at your session files or look at Save Screenshots. So if you select Screenshot Files, you see a list of all the screenshots it's stored, and you can select to save to USB. Or you can import these into the AirCheck G2 Manager. So you connect your unit, the micro USB port, to your laptop. In our AirCheck G2 Manager, go to Device Info, and you can transfer your screenshots right from there. For adding networks to profiles, this could be useful, but it can also be a little bit painful because of the onboard keyboard. So you want to add networks to your profile, so when you're on-site testing, you don't have to spend time configuring them, entering passwords and all that. But picking in a long SSID into the onboard keyboard can be a little bit tedious. So real quick and simple way. Look at your networks list and select the network you want to add to your profile, and then just select Connect. When you select Connect, it's automatically added to your profile. You don't have to type in any SSIDs. LinkLive.com. How many people here use LinkLive.com? Excellent. Excellent utility, cloud service. It works with several tools. The Link Sprinter was the first tool that it was designed for, but we've added Link Runner, AirCheck G2, and OneTouch to it as well. And there's a lot of obvious uses for it and test cases. I'm not going to go into any of those, but I'll cover a few things that you might not know about that's really quite useful. So when you upload test results, Ethernet test results, wireless test results to Link Live, you can add comments to that, such as noting the location that you ran the test from, what port you tested from, a situation or a context. I just finished reconfiguring this, and now I ran the test. There's a couple ways to do this. One is when you do upload a test to Link Live, you'll get an email. And you can reply to that email with whatever comments you want to attach to that test result. The second way is you just go right into the dashboard and add it. So when you do a test, you get this email. And by the way, you can actually enter any number of emails to be recipients. So if you send your tool out with somebody, a contractor or a technician, and you want the test results, but you also want your partner, your manager, your customer to also receive those, you can add all those email addresses into your Link Live account. Everyone that you add will receive an email for these test results. But basically, when you receive it, you just reply to it, and you just type in whatever comment you want to add to that test result. And then in your Link Live dashboard, that comment will get automatically attached to that test result. So you'll know the situation or the location from which you ran the test. And the second obvious way is you just go right to the dashboard. So this is more after the fact, but you can upload an image and put right on that test result, or you can just enter comments here. Filtering results, this is very useful. So if you've got Link Sprinter and Link Runner and AirCheck results that you've collected hundreds or thousands of them over the month, you can pretty much filter on any field that shows up there. So if you highlight, if you mouse over any field that shows up in your Link Live dashboard, and this is all browser-based, by the way. If you're not familiar with Link Live, it's simply a browser-based cloud service. Any field that you mouse over that pops up like this, you can select it and filter on that result. So you want to see all the results that you've collected for a specific SSID or a specific access point or a specific location or a date and time. Let's say you want to see all the results that use the specific DHCP server. You just select that field, and all the results will be filtered for that. Up here you'll see your filter that you've selected, and then you'll see only those results that match that filter. Then you can just hit this X to clear it out. Organizations, this is a pretty useful feature of Link Live. If you want to collaborate with other people, or you want other people to see your results, you're sending your tools out with other teams, and you want to be able to see their results. You want your team members to see it. You want your customer to see it. Basically, when you sign up for a Link Live account, you'll have a default organization created for you. You can create as many organizations as you want. For each one, you can invite other people to that organization. So if you want certain people to be able to see results for your tools, you can invite them. They can invite you. And so basically, everybody that's part of the organization that you've set up and invited can see their test results. So this is just a great way to collaborate for people on a team. And again, if you have a customer, you just want them to right away be able to see your test results, be able to get emails for those results, you can add them to here pretty easily. You can also do certain exclusions. For example, if you want to you want to allow somebody to view the test results, but the IP addresses of various resources may be sensitive, you don't want to display those. You can actually, for your organization, choose to exclude IP addresses from display. Remote user interface. Remote is probably not a good term to use for this feature. It's really designed to basically put a user interface from an AirCheck onto your laptop, so you can do training, you can do web conferences. If you do a WebEx with somebody, you want to show them something, you want to do a presentation like this and show them, you can do that. Can't really claim support that this is going to work over a wide area network. It wasn't really designed for that. It was really designed more for internal use, for doing sales demos and internal training, but we got a lot of input from people that use this for various reasons, and so we exposed the feature, made it public. So basically, it uses VNC. So you can use it's got VNC server built into the tool. You can pretty much use any VNC viewer, but we thoroughly test this with tight VNC, so that's what we recommend. So when you install VNC, when you download and install tight VNC, which is free, by default it'll also install the VNC server on your laptop. You probably don't want the server, so just select to install the viewer only. Connect the AirCheck G2 Ethernet port to your local network. And then on the G2 settings, you select device settings and remote user interface. And then you'll get a little screen showing the same instructions that I'm providing now. And then when you hit apply, the next screen you'll see, which I couldn't get a shot of, is basically a blank screen with the IP address of the AirCheck on it. And then you just type in that address, hit connect, and voila, you get your UI on there. So let me go ahead and run this quick. So here I will just bring up VNC. I'll select device settings, remote user interface, get my IP address, type it in here, and hit connect. Now this is fully functional. I can go through here and run various tests. Yes, the question was, does keyboard input work for that? So if I, for example, say, go to settings, networks, add a network. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't, that's not showing up here, is it? There we go. I'm sorry. There, yeah, the keyboard input does work here. No, I don't believe so. I don't think VNC doesn't allow a multi to one operation. That's correct, yeah. Yeah, this was a limitation on the older one that we've got a lot of input on, so we included it here. Locating an AP or an access point, or a client, so you can locate both APs and clients. So there's lots of techniques for doing this with various degrees of success. Our in-house expert RF engineer put together this process, and it's what I use. So basically, you want to locate an AP using the internal antenna. One good technique for doing this is the area that you want to locate. Let's just say it's an office environment. Divide it into quadrants and go to each corner, point the AirCheck in, and measure the signal level of the device that you're trying to locate. And just to show you what I mean by locate, so if I select an access point here, that's a Samsung, huh? I can locate. Now get a real-time signal meter that's homing in on that particular signal from that access point or a client, if that's what I'm looking for. And what I'm going to do is walk around looking for, following the increasing signal until I can actually find it. Now there's also audio that goes with this. If it annoys you, you can mute it. But with the audio, You don't have to constantly look at the screen while you're walking around bumping into things, so you can just hear it. It also works with the USB headset. So if you're in a sensitive environment, you want to use the audio, you can just plug in a USB headset and hear the audio through that. So the technique is once you've selected your AP and you go to that locate screen, you want to go to each of these four corners, determine what is giving you the strongest signal for that AP, and then repeat. Then go to that one quadrant, go to each corner, do the same thing, and you're basically going to do that. You're going to go to the outside corners of each iterative quadrant that you've homed in on, find the one with the strongest signal, and then eventually you'll home in on where that AP is located. One thing that's been pointed out and asked of us is if when you're on the AP detail screen, you note the signal level of that AP, and then you select locate, you go to the locate screen, you may see that the signal level actually drops by several dB. In nominal mode, the AirCheck is using 3 internal antennas, so it's picking up signal levels using the 3 antennas. When you go to the locate function, to make this cleaner, it uses 1 antenna. So you're basically going from 3 antennas to 1. And that's why you may see a lower signal on the locate screen. Important to note that the signal level you see in the locate screen is really to be used on a relative basis. What you're really using it for is to see if it's going up or down when you're trying to locate something. If your purpose is simply to benchmark the signal level of an AP at a specific location, definitely use that AP detail screen instead. If you're using the external antenna, that little flag antenna that plugs into the SMA port on the side, it's almost the opposite sort of technique. What you want to do with that is go right to the center of your area that you're looking for and point that external flag antenna in each direction. And whatever gives you the strongest signal measurement, repeat that for the smaller quadrant. Go to the center there, point it, and just kind of do this again in an iterative process. Now when you're doing this, make sure that you hold the antenna at a constant height, because again what you're really wanting to do is basically remove all variables of that signal measurement except for your proximity there. So you don't want to be changing the height of the antenna because that's going to change your signal reception. You also want to make sure that you hold the unit and the antenna fairly stationary and just move the whole thing as one. Because you're holding an antenna, but that cable that connects it to the AirCheck, that's called an antenna. It's also picking up. So if you're moving that around, you'll see the signal jump up and down. So try to keep it fairly stationary. And really what you want to do is just turn your whole body as one as you're trying to pick up the signal. Also, don't forget to look up and down. It's kind of funny because the feature was designed for locating rogue APs, but based on what we hear, it's used a lot more often just to locate a hidden AP that's hidden in the ceiling. Authorized, but somebody has to go there to replace it or fix it or do something with it. And if it's in the ceiling, they're not really sure where it is. Apparently, not all installations have really good documentation behind them, so don't always know where these APs are. So this is just a good technique for finding the AP. Filters and sorting. So whenever you're on any the network's access points or clients list, if you select the filter up here, there are various things you can do there. You can filter basically on any number of fields here. For example, you can filter on security. Let's say in your network you want to see if any of my access points been set to web. So you simply select security. I couldn't get a screenshot of the next screen, but it'll basically list WPA2, enterprise, personal, web, all the different securities. Select web, and then go back to your access point list, knowing those access points that show up as WIP will show up. In this case, none were in there. It kind of surprises me because I actually took these screenshots in our office environment. We have fairly small office, but over 100 access points there. It's just a really noisy environment, just every type of configuration and vendor you can possibly imagine. So I was actually surprised we didn't see any here. You can filter on signal level. You can filter on SSID. So filtering on SSIDs, we talked earlier about sweeping an environment for unauthorized ones. You can also filter on minimum signal levels. So by default, the AirCheck will show you all the APs that it picks up, down to the NIG 90s. But maybe you just want to look at your APs that are above NIG 65 threshold. Maybe you just want to look for APs that could cause back off or above NIG 85 dBm. So you basically go to your 802.11 settings and select signal level filtering. And here you can set your minimum signal level. Make sure you turn it on and then hit apply. Now only APs above that signal level will show up. And by the way, networks obviously are detected by detecting the APs. And so only networks that are supported by an APs above the signal level will also show up. So when you go into a network or an access point or a client and select an individual one, you'll see there's a lot of different details that are shown for that, are collected and reported for that device. For the summary screen, which you see here for networks, we wanted to keep the UI fairly clean and simple, so we couldn't show everything. So we had to be very selective about what fields that we're going to show for a network on the summary page and for an access point on the summary page. So we show the signal level, the security type, how many access points, and the SNR. Those are pretty important ones. But if you want to see another field listed on your summary, you can select to sort on that field and it'll show up. So this particular field on the right, which by default for networks is SNR, if you select the sort button right up here, you'll see a list of all the fields you can sort by. So for example, if you want to see client counts show up here instead, number of clients connected to that network, you would simply select that and hit apply. And now we can see that that field is now showing the clients. So if you see any of these fields you would rather see on the summary screen, you can just select a sort on it and it'll show up. So we did a lot of settings and adjustments in here. Rather than having to go in every time and make those, use profiles. These are, you can have tens or even hundreds of different profiles, each with different settings attached to them. These profiles are good if you're going to a specific site that has specific networks. So any network you pre-configure is assigned to a profile. Thresholds, channel scan settings, anything like that. Custom signal offsets. We do have in the settings, you can have the reported signal level offset by a certain amount because we know the AirCheck's radio, it's an 11AC 3x3 radio, is very sensitive. So it typically will register a higher received signal level than a lot of other user devices will. So if you want to see, if your iPhone, for example, is typically 8 dBm lower than what the AirCheck will show, you can offset those signals. Then you can save that to a profile. So on the AirCheck screen, this little name up here, default, that's your profile name that's currently loaded. So if you never created a profile before, you'll see default show up here. You can go to settings into the profile menus, but you can also just touch that. So if you just touch that, you go right to the profiles menu. And here you can select to load a different profile that maybe has different settings to it. And now you're ready to go. Testing with 802.1x certificate files. So the AirCheck G2 does support a number of EAP authentication methods for 802.1x and WPA2 Enterprise. If it's a server-side certificate, it's pretty straightforward. On the AirCheck, you just select it, enter a username and password, and you're good to go. If it requires a client-side certificate, it supports that too. You need to use the AirCheck G2 Manager, but you can add one or more client certificate files to a profile using the AirCheck G2, upload that profile, using the AirCheck G2 manager, upload that profile, and then when you connect to an 8021X or WPA2 Enterprise network, you have the option to select that. So on the AirCheck G2 manager, you go to the profile setup, and when you're creating or editing a profile, there's an option here for certificates. You basically add that, and you'll get a file browser window. You select all your certificate files that you want to use. For example, these here, and then you upload that to the AirCheck. Now in the AirCheck, when you're configuring a network, and you configure this, for example, for for WPA2 Enterprise, the EAP type is like a TLS and requires a client certificate. You can basically select this, and you'll select what certificate that you've loaded that you want to use. Okay, we're running down to about 5 minutes now, so I'm going to skip a little bit ahead here. These are basically how to troubleshoot common problems. One thing I do want to show here, with wireless being slow, common problem, a lot of well-known causes to it. Probably the most useful screen in the AirCheck that you can go to right away. This shows up within about 10 seconds after powering the tool on. This is the channel screen here. And here you can quickly see if you got too many APs on one channel causing CCI, if your airtime utilization is too high, if your non-Wi-Fi airtime utilization due to interference is too high. But we've also heard at this conference a lot of cases where Wi-Fi problems aren't really due to the Wi-Fi. You all remember Lee Badman's famous napkin diagram. So if a user is complaining they can't connect to a specific network, a lot of things that could be going wrong here, but one good thing to test is go ahead and first verify that you've got the right signal levels in SNR, that your security type is set up correctly, that it does support your particular device's type of technology. But then if you hit this connect and connect to the network, you'll get really easy green, red, pass, fail steps there. And you can see, yes, I was able to connect to the Wi-Fi, but there's no DNS service available. And that's why my users are complaining that the Wi-Fi doesn't work. So basically, that's really what I wanted to cover here. I can take any questions, and we do have the AirCheck UI still running if we want to do any live demos for anybody. Any questions?
Questions? Inbound? It's on.
I inherited a network with a ridiculously long passphrase that doesn't quite fit in the G2. 73 characters.
72?
73.
Oh, 73.
Now I just leave it on to punish my support desk.
Okay.
So I can't, I mean, one of the problems I have is with the G2 is I can't fit that passphrase in there, so I can't connect to the network.
Okay. I think I can't recall what the limitation is. I think it's either 64. I think it might be 64, 63. Okay.
Some people know.
Well, I think there's probably no reason why we couldn't expand that. I mean, basically, for various reasons I won't go into, we do have to put some limit on there. But I don't think that there's a reason why we couldn't go from 63 to maybe 100. I guess what would be good to know is 100 enough? Anybody use passwords longer than 100? Yeah.
Question here?
Yeah. I'll take that back. I think we can do that. Yes.
Is there a way to create custom session names and have them enumerate instead of session 823?
Oh, so
want to create a cut, you know, like
Yeah.
16 floor, and then have it count up.
And count up from a custom name?
Yep.
Okay, not currently, that's not in there. But I mean, I can definitely see the purpose, the use for that. So currently, as you know, it defaults to session and iterates from there. I talked about naming your session files per the location or perhaps for the situation or data once you did it. So having it.
Even if it was in the profile. Even if it was in the profile. And the custom profile would have the session name.
Oh, to have the sessions iterate be named according to the profile. Okay, that's actually a good idea, yeah. No, currently it's not possible, but I'll take that back to engineering as a feature request. And by the way, you know, right now we're adding a lot of stuff to this product. You know, our feature backlog right now literally is over 100. The AirCheck engineering team hates me because I keep dumping more and more stuff on them. They don't hate me, but I owe them a lot of lunches. But all the features that we're adding, for the most part, are all based on requests and demands that we get. You know, my job is to take those 100+ feature requests we received and prioritize them based on what's important to you and the frequency in which I hear them. So hearing stuff, by all means, let us know stuff like that. We'll definitely get them in the feature request backlog, and then it's just a matter of prioritizing them and seeing how many of these we can get into the next release.
All right. Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Appreciate the G2s, too.